So we have Medicaid updates in starting today. We have the first day of the fiscal year. So I was sitting in my brain thinking, there's so much going on. I need to do a summary. And how about doing it on the 1st of July? First of all, it's after the election, so we can all celebrate. No more commercials from the politicians. And also we can get caught up on where we are at with Medicaid. All right. So this is sort of I like to frame things. I'm a teacher at heart, so I like to frame things from the top. In May of 2025, so just over a year ago, it's also known as the Big Beautiful Bill. And that particular bill slashed the funding for Medicaid on the federal level. So our Medicaid is actually half from the federal government. So we are dependent on the fund from the federal government so that they can still offer the same level of services. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Colorado. We did start the legislative session on the 14th of January, and it ended by May. So the goal of the legislature is, one, they pass a lot of bills. That's probably what we think about. But actually, their one statutory requirement is to make sure that they pass a budget. They aren't ordered to pass a certain number of bills a year. The thing that they are tasked with every year is to get the budget organized and signed by the end of the session. And then once it's passed through both houses and the legislature, the governor signs it. And I have to be honest with you, the speed and volume and level of change that came down from the federal government and the state government was just overwhelming. Even for a super policy wonk nerd like me, it was really, really hard to keep up. And then some of the stuff they proposed at the state level, they changed. So right when you thought you understood it, they went and changed it. So yeah, it's confusing. So the governor responded to that HR 1 from the federal level on August 28th, starting a bunch of changes and saying, hey, we have to reduce our state budget by $252 million across all the different state agencies. $79 million of that first executive order was coming from HCPF cuts. And then he ordered another, I call it the scary executive order because he did it on Halloween. That was an additional $537 million. So you can see that it was more than double what they initially thought, right? So it's really significant. So slowly, between the HR 1 getting passed and legislature starting, they realized, holy heck, we have to start coming up with ways to save money now. And an executive order is a way to create change without having the same input of the legislative process. So it was pretty serious. So what happens is there's a change in the state budget, either through the executive order or through legislation. And then the changes float down and they go to the department. And then they have memos. So there's a ton of memos on the HCPF website. That sort of is a goal to communicate things to the public. And those often overrule past memos. So you kind of have to read from the top and go down because sometimes they correct or change things. They also have a bunch of fact sheets on the HCPF website, which is to get information out. But a lot of them were honestly confusing, even to people that are in the space. So also eventually all of these changes go through rulemaking, and that means that everything that changes in statute or in operations has to go through the rulemaking process, and that's at the HCPF Medical Services Board. So if you hear about the MSB meeting, that's what it is. MSB does get stakeholder input, and it's better to do it written because now they've capped the comment to 20 minutes per agenda item, and that's another frustration for me, but giving things in writing is always helpful. So yeah, that's the process. Change in the budget through legislation or executive order. Memos and fact sheets come from HCPF. Changes go through rulemaking at the Medical Services Board. I used to teach social studies. I kind of dig this stuff. All right. Let's going down a little bit. Sorry, my slide got too much on that slide. So what is my badass take on all of these impacts, right? Because a lot of people say, cut to the chase, Maureen. So I'm going to do that at the beginning here. A lot of agencies are going to close. There's going to be lower rates, caps, limits, and more scrutiny on billing, So I do think that's a reality. We've already seen a couple of companies that offer services to the community close because they're realizing that cash flow for families is going to be tough, and also access to other funding outside of Medicaid is also going to get harder. All right, so members are probably are seeing an impact in the Community First Choice. So Community First Choice is that optional program. Some of those services used to be in the waivers, and now they're outside the waivers. In the Community First Choice bucket, you get homemaker, personal care, health maintenance activities. There's also some other great services like remote supports, prepared meals that are in that also. But the direct services of homemaker, personal care, and health maintenance are getting hit with soft caps, and they use a care calculator to determine those hours per member. And one population that's really getting hit hard are the younger kids, because they're saying that a lot of the care is typical for their age, which I generally disagree with. So I see some people, I'm letting some people in late. Feel free to use the chat. I'm just trying to monitor the waiting room and get through my slides. Another thing is we're going to see the third bullet here that there's going to be a continued reduction in home and community-based services in the waiver and what family guardians of minors can be paid to provide. Also, we're seeing rate cuts, and that also impacts the ability to hire someone outside the family, right? Even if you could find someone, the rates aren't enough to attract applicant. Another thing that we're saying is mental health services. There's new caps and limits that are going to be impacting members. Those are Medicaid services, but they fall under the Behavioral Health Administration. So I put that in there because a lot of us are forgetting, hey, mental health is really important, and a lot of the cuts happening in that side of the state plan, the Medicaid medical coverage, are impacting our community. And there's also more need for adults to get long-term supports and services, LTSS, because that's what's going to exempt them from the Medicaid work requirements coming down. So there are a lot more cuts coming ahead, but people keep coming here for services. It's interesting, right? Even though we have all this stuff, we're still a destination state more than other states. So what do I think? I think we need to get really creative, scrappy, and we also be more informed. So that's what my company, Navigating Disability Colorado, does. So I created this because I found the system incredibly hard to navigate. So I quit my special teaching job and opened this company, and I offer support and try to digest things so that you don't have to go to all the meetings that I go to. So let's get to Colorado specifically. What's happening in 2026? Well, on October 1st of last year, we had a rate cut. We had just received a 1.6% rate increase across the board for all services, and then they cut it. Just a few months later, they cut it again. And then we had another cut effective today for 2% across the board. There were quite a few carve-out and exceptions, but for example, I, as a family caregiver for my son on the DD waiver, I had to sign a new contract with a 2% reduction in my daily rate. So that's a big deal for everybody across Colorado. All right, so we have some cost savings that are happening in long-term supports, long-term home health. That's a typo, sorry, long-term home health, CNA and PDN, and that's skilled medical care. So if you have a medically complex individual in your life, you're probably seeing this. There's a lot of reductions and denials, full denials for skilled care, and that would be for CNA and PDN. Although our rule allows children up to 20 to get 24 hours care, or over 21 and over to get 23, that is the max. Now we're seeing limitations coming based on medical necessity. We also have a daily limit on how much Colorado, in their agreement with the federal government, can pay for these services. So again, the bottom line is important. This is for coverage limit. It's not a caregiver workforce cap. We're covering that on the next page. So yeah, CNA and PDN, I think the introduction of First Choice, it has that health maintenance activities benefit in it, is sort of watering down what is more skilled CNA work. And there's a trend, a lot of people are noticing that the state wants less CNA, PDN, and more health maintenance activities because it's cheaper and it's not licensed. Those individuals are not licensed. And it's very concerning when you have a high acuity individual medically. All right, and we have the overall soft caps. This is what you might be hearing from your case management agency. Soft caps, it does have an exception process, but it's extremely hard to get. I have been working with some families on that. It's a weekly limit of 56 hours per caregiver starting next July, so 1 year from today. And that's across those categories of personal care, homemaker, health maintenance activities, long-term home health aid, which is CNA, and long-term home health and nursing, which is PDN. Thanks to so many families, a lot of you may be in this room, we luckily were able to impact the Medical Services Board and work with HCPAP. They came up with kind of a step down, like a staircase down, right? So starting today, 84 max per week per caregiver. That's all they can bill. And then the next one will jump down, January 1st and then July 1st. And there's a maximum of 16 hours a day for any provider to provide care. Now, a lot of people are like, well, who's going to work that many hours? Well, I'll tell you, if you don't have a medically fragile or super complex kid or family member rather, that needs a lot of protective oversight or medical supervision, you are giving care, 16 hours a day or more. So a lot of it is unpaid. We know that too. So this is a very big deal because it's going to impact our community financially. All right, what is this community first choice? That's where we took some of the in-home support services out of the waivers and kind of made it more democratic for anyone with long-term care designation or disability designation from the state. So a person can be on Medicaid through being low income, Medicaid, or by going through the buy-in program. And they can access CFC through their case management agency. They do not need to be on a waiver to be on CFC. One impact is if you're not on a waiver and you're earning money from CFC without being on a waiver, that money is income taxed. If you're on a waiver and you earn CFC income and you live, both of these cases, you live in the home, then it is exempt from under the difficulty of care payment. Also, within CFC, we have the new rule of 7 hours per member per week. So that again was impacted by MSB advocacy. A lot of people went to the MSB and said, hey, I'm a single parent. I can't, this is really impacting me. So it used to be 5 hours a week per member, and they raised it to 5 hours a week per provider, and now they raised it to 7 hours a week per member. And it can be shared between two legally responsible people and other people if you can find them for the rates that we have, which is not easy to do. And we have, just wanted to make a note here. I've been having this issue with a lot of case managers. If you are a parent or guardian to an 18-year-old or older, you are not in LRP anymore. So you would not have this limit. So that's really important to know. And also one note to keep in mind is CDOS does allow for you to use your funding allocation more creatively and offer a rate that is higher. So you get a amount of money, which is based on the hours you qualify times the rate per hour. And then you, as the employer, because you become the employer, determine what to pay the employee and you run your payroll. So if you're interested in CDOS, it is a way to perhaps within our current budget get more money in your pocket and your caregiver's pocket, because the overhead, instead of being 20, 30, 40%, is more like 10%. So yeah, if you're interested in that, CDOS, it's a good thing to explore. Impact on children. All right, so we do have a lot of changes in the children's world too. We have the pediatric behavioral therapy, which is ABA. It was cut down to 95% of the benchmark, and it's facing scrutiny. And there's a new licensure bill that just passed that's going to require licensure for providers in this benefit. Also, Community Connector, they cut the rate by 15% to match the rate for comparable adult services. I think that's terrible. I think we should have raised the rate for adult services, because now with this rate, it's basically the respite rate, and we cannot attract people for children paying them $22 an hour. Also, there's a new reduction of the annual limit for this. It used to be 520 hours a year for Community Connector for a child. Now they've cut it in half down to 260, which averages out to be 5 hours a week. Not only is that bad enough, but they put together these strict age-appropriate uses of the time that you bill, and it's really ableist in my opinion, because a lot of the things that they are requiring in my opinion, are ableist because they're for higher people with more that don't have as high support needs. So it's hard to participate in a group when your disability accommodations don't allow for that. Your disability is too significant for that. Maybe you can't show up regularly for a group class. It's just, I have a lot of concerns about that, but I'm going to keep going. I don't want to keep you here all day. All right, so DD waiver impact. The waiver enrollments for DD are going to drop in half, and the wait list will grow because they are only doing one new enrollment for every 2 slots that open starting today. And they're also ending the enrollment for moving. It used to be that a youth on CES or CHIRP could transition to the DD waiver. Initially, that was going to be effective today, 7/1, but thanks to advocacy at the Medical Services Board, they moved it to next January 1st. So if your loved one is on CES or CHIRP and is 18 or over 18 before January 1, we need to talk and get you applying for that DD waiver as soon as possible. Another impact in the DD waiver is the PEDI, which is post-eligibility treatment of income. It's when they're going to make members contribute part of their income toward their cost of services. It used to be they were going to do it for employment, but after a lot of advocacy at the MSB and in HCPF meetings that I go to way too much, they actually said, okay, we're not going to worry about income. If they're on DD, we assume that, they have significant support needs. They're looking more for getting money out of the cash benefits like Social Security disability insurance. So a lot of our loved ones receive a higher benefit than SSI. So if they get a higher benefit, then they're going to take some money from that and give it to the residential PASA agency. And the implementation is supposed to be this summer, but there's still a few details on this. So we'll see how that works out. All right, one other thing, I want to plant a seed in your brain today that we have a new commission. At the end of the session, Medicaid was kind of, they balanced the budget on the backs of the Medicaid benefits, right? So now they said, hey, we need to understand Medicaid more. So they ran a bill late in the session, and they called it the Medicaid Committee. They created a commission on Medicaid, and this commission had a $500,000 allocation. I think it's highly a waste of money that could have funded 2 people for a year on the DD waiver, but then they go and hire a contractor, and then the contractor in a few months is supposed to solve all of our problems and come up with proposals for, I think, 40% of our budget now. And the next meeting is on July 6th. I do recommend that you get involved if you're interested. I went down in person to the last one. It's very interesting. I got to talk to Gretchen Hammer, the new executive director of the HCPF department. It's good to go and be seen, or tune in and listen, or listen to the recording. Upcoming changes are creating group rates for certain CFC and home health services. This is a little bit concerning to me because then we're talking about more congregate, that's the word, congregate services where you have a group, and those tend to be segregated, but they're trying to make it less expensive to care for our loved ones. Also, we have a single assessment tool getting developed, and that's been around for, almost a decade. So let's see if they cross the finish line on that. And then this is a very concerning one for those of us in the medically complex community, because a per diem rate is making it like the DD waiver where you get a flat amount per day, and usually it's very low. I get $7 an hour for caring for my son 24/7. So we can't hire nurses with that kind of rate dilution. Someone put in the chat how to find the information. I didn't want to throw a ton of citations in here, but you can Google Colorado Commission on Medicaid, and it will pop up, and then you go to the committee page, and it has the link to the agendas, the link to tune in information. They did hire the contractor last time I was down there, so we should be getting more information. So even though we have all these cuts, people, we still have more funding in established programs than most states in our country. Isn't that kind of shocking? And we are a destination state. I get calls every week, private consultations where people want guidance on how to move here and get services. And this is concerning to me. Not because I don't have compassion for those other people, but if we keep having people come in, we're going to have to dilute, so we don't have any more money to divide up. The pie will get smaller. Another thing to do is to keep learning about Medicaid. A lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of benefits in the state plan. I'll give you an example. My son has some behavioral support needs, and I have been unsuccessful in finding a BCBA, ABA company that wants to work with a 19-year-old who has private insurance and Medicaid. All those things are barriers. So recently I found a psychologist who does weekly sessions direct with the client. She's also an OT, and she also has a team of other therapists who work with the family to do family therapy. And I had never really, honestly, thought I should be looking for a psychologist because I can't really access another benefit in Medicaid. So let's get really creative and thoughtful and start looking for things in places maybe we didn't look before. So I'm not sure how you got here today. You may have gotten my newsletter because I sent that out to 2,200 people. Kind of funny story. I just sent it out at 7 o'clock last night and I had 140 people sign up for this. A lot of people are caregiving or working or have other appointments, so they will be getting the email with the link sent to them. But if you did not get it through the newsletter, maybe you saw it on Facebook. So I also posted on Facebook, or maybe a friend shared it with you. And this is the QR code. You can get your phone, or you will be getting a link at the end of this when it's ready. And I will include that sign up for the newsletter URL if you're on your phone already. It's also available on our website, Navigating Disability Colorado. But I'd love to get you on that list because I have a new commitment and I'm making it public. I'm going to be sending out a short email every week to keep people more updated on things. So I'd love to get you on that list. Also, I offer private consultations in 30 and 60-minute segments. So if you're interested in getting private personal advice, it's also on my website or at that QR code. And my newsletter will also give you information about my roadmap program. I have a roadmap program that helps people get onto the Medicaid waivers and also figure out how to use CFC versus state plan versus Medicaid, and then also learn about local funding like mill levy or state funding like family support services or state SLS services. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water and then we're going to jump into the federal stuff. All right, so we talked about the federal change from the funding HR bill down. Now we have some other federal shifts happening that are important to keep in mind here in Colorado. We have work requirements coming. So work requirements are kind of a scary thing, but we need to stay on top of them and informed. The federal government did issue a document from Health and Human Services and CMS saying, okay, this is what we want to tell you as states to do for the federal work requirements. It's almost 400 pages. I haven't read it all. And it's basically saying this is what you need to do to create your own state policy. Medicaid, again, is a state program matched by the federal government. So every state has a different Medicaid system. That's why if you move to another state, you have to start all over because Medicaid is in the state budget and then it's matched by the federal government. So more conservative states like Georgia, Florida, Texas, they have very low amounts in their budget for things like home and community-based services or community first choice. So this was the directive, and now from that, HCPF has to craft their state plan. And the basics are that you have to work, seek work, or volunteer 80 hours a month to maintain Medicaid, or you can meet the exemptions. So this is a quote from the Medicaid HCPF website that HR 1 directs the states to do this by January 2027. And the requirements apply to low-income adult 19 to 64 who are not in programs like long-term care supports and services. That means waivers or CFC or buy-in programs, right? So if you're in a buy-in program like the Children's Disability Buy-in Program or the Working Adults with Disabilities Buy-in Program, those both require disability determinations. So they have reviewed your status and determined that you have a life-impacting disability. So that is the scoop, people. There is a meeting coming up on July 21st at 9 o'clock. There's also one for the medical frailty on July 29th. And you can also Google HCPF work requirement, and then the page will come up here. I have an FAQ page here, and the links to those meetings are listed as well. So the federal work requirements are, I am already noticing a bump up in the amount of time it's taking for our ARG, Arbor, or Action Review Group. That's the contractor that does the disability reviews. More and more people are applying for this because they're realizing, hey, maybe I haven't done this before, but I need to get designated as disabled so that I can, meet the requirement to be exempted from the work requirement and maintain my Medicaid. We also had a Department of Justice opinion on HCBS saying that home and community-based services are not required. There's a lot of opinion on this. This is not a court ruling or a decision from the court, but it's more of a thermometer telling us of how the administration is viewing supporting people to live in the home and community. So that is concerning, but we have to contact our federal people and tell them how important it is. So I do on my Facebook page often post call to actions where you can click a button. Sometimes the ARC National has a effort so that you can put in your zip code and your address and it sends, or you can reach out directly to your state or federal representatives to make sure that they realize how important it is to you. The other thing that happened was a move from the special ed office at the federal level from the Department of Education over to Health and Human Services. This is concerning because there are civil rights enforcement pieces in that department, and it's really more of the messaging that the federal government now, the administration, I should say, really thinks education should be run by the state, which honestly it already is, but this is part of that. The other thing that I have a thermometer reading down there, I think this is also an indication of moving toward a medical model versus a social model. I'm an advocate of the social model, meaning that we embrace people where they're at with their disability, and we don't think that there's something broken about them that we have to fix. Also, a lot of us rely on the federal government to enforce IDEA, federal protections for us in public education. So this weakens it because they've also fired tons of people from that department, although I heard they had to hire some of them back because they had so many things to work through. So that's another thing to keep in mind on the educational level. If you're interested in that, one person that I follow online, and she also has a great newsletter, is Lisa Lightner, Lightner, and she has a newsletter and also a community where you can learn about all your IDEA educational protections. And so I would recommend following her. Her company is called A Day in Your Shoes and Don't IEP Without Me. Those are her two different pages that she runs. But if you Google her, you'll find them. All right. So as I mentioned before, we still have options. There's more funding. Keep learning. Find about other sources for IDD. We have local and state money that are not Medicaid. We do have harder times ahead, but it's time for us to get smart and connected. So these are my source pages. Like I mentioned, I did record this presentation and I will be sending it out to everyone who registered. Here again is my newsletter and roadmap. Oh, still arriving. If you're arriving late, I did record this and I will send it out. And there's my link to do a private consultation. I do have a Facebook page also. Many of you probably found out about this through Facebook, but if you haven't liked me on Facebook, you can do that too. And now we have the fun Q&As. And if you want to take yourself off of mic, I did not block you from being able to talk. So Elena asks, where do you find information? Yeah, you can Google it to find information about the commission meeting. I do think the commission meeting has a lot of opportunity for us because these are legislators. Most of the JBC is on there, plus people that are on the Health and Human Services committees in the different chambers, and they want to hear from people. So if you can get involved in that, that's great. Any other questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat if you prefer, or if you want to come off of your mic, you can just speak up or raise your hand if you like to be proper, but we're a small enough group that I think we could just speak up. Any question about things in general or your own situation? A shy group. Anyone have one thing I always like to do in these Zooms is, I don't want it just to be about me and the information that I presented, but have any of you had any experiences with things like denials or reductions for your long-term home health? Have you had issues with appealing and trying to get the soft capped to go higher? I'd love to hear personal experiences. It looks like Carla came up with me. Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I actually that happened to me where my daughter's social security went down last year. Our EBT also went down, or they actually removed it completely, and we were getting about like yeah, like 580 a month, and they just completely removed it. And they just pretty much said it's because I am my daughter's CNA now. So since I'm getting paid that way, I'm making too much. And we moved here specifically, like you said, for her services when she was 2. She's now 10. She is nonverbal, and she still needs ABA therapy. So this is something, like you said, where it's a little concerning because we kind of knew this was the inevitable, but actually having to live it and make adjustments, it can be a little challenging. And so now I'm at the point where I'm really having to think about what other resources and what other ways can I use, the skills that I have to kind of start forming a form of income.
Yeah, and I've also heard, see, this is why I love it when people come off of mic and share their stories because we get a nice dialogue going. I've heard of some creative people that are looking to provide respite to other families. We know respite is really, really hard to find. And I'm recommending to people that you get like a little micro group together in community and say, hey, my daughter's at school during these times. Your daughter's not in school. Maybe I could provide respite to you while I have coverage for her. And that way you can increase your income and also support another family that might need to work or take care of other children or just take care of themselves, right? So I think coming up with these kinds of things are the way of the future. So let's start thinking outside the box and creatively. And there are ways to increase income, yes, but also increase opportunity for other families. So, for example, if you provided rest, then maybe that mom could go and work part-time, or she could go and give care to a parent or another community member, right? So, how can we support each other, one, in earning some income, but then also opening opportunity for that other family to earn income, right? And if we start all doing that, it's kind of like mutual aid. We're all together helping each other out. So
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's great. And I hadn't even thought about that, but that, I mean, if one can, why wouldn't we? I feel like
just you don't know this. And if you happen to have if your friend happens to have their services at the same agency, excuse me, the same agency that you use, you're already onboarded with them. They have your background check, they have your first aid, you know how to chart, right? And the one thing that because my brain gets going at these things when I'm laying in bed at night, is also making sure that your agency has a separate category so that when you get your 1099, because that money would be taxable because it's not your family member. So we have to think about that, is that it will be a little bit of a lower rate and you will have to pay taxes on that and keep that accounting kind of a firewall between your accounting. So, okay, let me just review here. Thank you so much for sharing that, Carla. I appreciate it. Okay, so we have a question about the exception process for single parents to get more than 56 hours. Well, the 56 hours, we did cover that, Michelle, and I am sending the recording out. I can go back to that slide real quick. The 56 hours is having a step down, so it's not right away. The 56 hours doesn't go until next July. So starting today, the max is 84 per week, and the second one is 70. That goes in January, and then the third one is July 56. So we also have to realize that the state does not view people differently whether they are a single parent or not. They're just saying each provider, this is the maximum. So when you're requesting your maximum, your justification cannot be because I'm a single parent. Your justification has to be, why can't you get other people to provide this care? Because this is the maximum per provider. And if it's medical immune system, for example, some people do have loved ones who have super sensitive autoimmune and they pretty much are isolated so that they don't transfer germs. That could be a justification. But, it's pretty much set. And if you can't earn your income this way, like we were talking about, we may need to get creative and figure out how you could support some income coming in that is not billable through this. And this also doesn't include some of the billables in the HCBS waiver. This is for, right up here, it talks about home help, homemaker, HMA, a CNA, and PDN. So if you're providing community connector 5 hours a week, that's above this number. If you're providing excessive cleaning, that's above this number. If you're doing supported community connector for your loved one, if they're an adult, that's above this. So that's the other thing, is we got to keep these categories kind of straight in our head. That's for more of the CFC benefit, right? And the LTHS, long-term home health. And then the HCBS waiver income is separate. So you may be able to, now that you realize that, say, okay, that kind of increases my ability to bill some, but there's a step down, and we'll see how it goes. It is going to impact a lot of people. One thing that I threw out to case management agencies, I don't know, I'm kind of curious, and then I'll go back to the chat. I'm curious if any of you like this idea. I thought that we could help the issue with case manager workforce by creating part-time positions as case managers. So say, for example, I and Carla both wanted to become case managers, and we care for our loved one, but they go to school during the day. She and I could split an FTE position and cover different days and hours and be a case management position together. One, you can work from home. There is some in-home or in-person stuff, but it's pretty limited. Two, you have the lived experience of all of these waiver stuff. So I don't know if you guys like that idea, but I thought it would be a great idea. And then also have some flexibility with hours so that you can get coverage for your loved one and be able to earn some income. The benefits at the case management agencies are actually really good. You can get health insurance, PTO, all kinds of stuff. So what do you think of that? Well, Michelle likes it. Good. All right. Naomi likes it. All right. If anyone on this call is from a case management agency, I'm going to take that back to leadership. All right. So I have a question here. Swati, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, is new to the U.S., currently in Denver, had to move to California. Can I help with a budget attorney for registering guardianship, trust, etc. in California? Okay. So if you're living in Denver now, it sounds like you're moving to California. Guardianship and approval of estates and guardianship conservatorships, those are all different in every state. So you really need to find someone in California who can do that for you. And what do I want to say? California has an entirely different statute. Right now in Colorado, you have to get two different. We have guardianship separate from conservatorship. Conservatorship is for money. Guardianship is for medical and residential decision making. In California, they're both together. They just have one thing called conservator. So that's another example of how it's hard to translate between states. But yeah, if you want to do I have helped a lot of people in different states. Why? Because the process and the details might be different, but the thought of saying, hey, do you have an ABLE account? Do you have a special needs account? Do you have, your estate stuff in place? What about Social Security? Do they have SSI, SSDI? Are they dependent adult child? All of those things I can talk about more broadly. And I can ask some people I know in California. So if you'd like to do a private consult, I'd be happy to do that. I'll pull up that slide again. Yeah, we can talk more about that. There you go. I pulled that up for you. All right. I hope that helped. So Carla likes the idea. All right. Anyone else want to share their experience recently with, also one thing I didn't put on there because I didn't want to have this go past an hour, is trying to keep my slide deck short, is the challenge of finding respite care. One idea is to provide respite for other people in our community. Another idea is to post a job in your local Facebook group. So for example, I live in Littleton, and there's a ton of Littleton community pages. There's some family page, a mom's page, a building community page, a gardening page. There's tons of different pages on Facebook. And I was talking to one mom who has 2 complete care adults, and she's found that lately to be a really good place to find people hyper locally because gas is so expensive, travel time, traffic. Other people are using care.com and posting a position there, and then interviewing all of that. And you can actually search for people that have their profile up. Care.com is kind of like a dating website. They have people who offer care, and then families like ours seeking care, and then you look at each other's profiles and have a job posted. I like to look through the profiles and hone down on a small mileage area from my zip code, and then I look for keywords like special ed, OT, social worker, things like that, if you want to have a skilled person work with your loved one. So anyone have any new strategies for respite, or maybe creative ways that you're using your Medicaid funding or for summertime care? Because I know summertime is often really challenging for getting coverage for people. Okay, Swati asked, how do you become a respite provider? Well, if you're in California, you'll have to ask there. Here in Colorado, you have to onboard with a program-approved service agency called a PASA. And a PASA, their basic requirements from the state is a background check in every state that you've lived in the past many, many years. They also do you have to provide first aid, CPR, AED, and then you have to do their agency-specific training. So it's not that difficult to become a respite provider in Colorado. And if you provide residential care, like to an adult around the clock, usually the residential agencies have additional things like crisis training. A lot of them make you get a QMAP. So that's a qualified medical administrative something. I don't know if the P stands for administration. So to give medication, you have to have a QMAP, and a lot of agencies just make you have that. So it really depends on what you're offering for respite, what state you're in. So yeah, and recruiting people for respite providers. I have another thing. And please take yourself off of mute and speak up. I don't want to talk the whole time. But I have a thing I call it putting on my respite glasses. I recruited the coach from YMCA who ended up working for my son full time for about a year before COVID. I've also recruited the checker at the Walgreens store, believe it or not. I have a card, and he interacts with my son amazingly. For a while, he was going to Walgreens every day, so we got to know the Walgreens people really well. And I just gave him a little note, and it said, hey, if you're ever interested in care. I don't want to say it out loud in front of his coworkers, right? But I flipped him a note with my card, and he called me and he was like, I'm so flattered. I already work 3 jobs, but I will keep you in mind. So, I got to put on those glasses and say, hey, who do I know in the community? Maybe it's a para at school. Maybe it's another parent at school. And you want to ask them if they would provide respite. Let's get creative and use benefits. Another benefit that a lot of people don't know of, if you're on CES and you have a loved one between 12 and 17, there is an amazing benefit in there that I worked on called the Youth Day Services. Okay, and Youth Day Services is respite, but it's only for youth 10 to 17, and it's only to provide the opportunity for the parent to work, volunteer, or seek work. So basically, it's a daycare benefit. It doesn't have a cap, people. It does not have a cap. Probably will if they listen to this recording, but so you could work and have someone regularly help with your teen and get paid that respite without that 1880 unit cap that you have in regular respite. So that's really, let's talk about these things. Let's share it in the community so that we can, maybe that will free someone up to be able to go and earn income somewhere else. Youth Day services generally are provided one-on-one. I think Megan's place in Wheat Ridge got onboarded, but she said she doesn't have a lot of people in that age group right now. But no, it's just like respite. You get on board. It's the same requirements: background check, first aid, CPR, AED, and agency training. And then you bill it like respite, but the respite is relieving the parent not to take care of themselves, right? Respite, the verbiage in the waiver itself is to relieve the caregiver, the primary caregiver. And the goal with Youth Day services is to relieve the parent or guardian so that they can work, volunteer, or seek work. So there's kind of the same benefit with different intentions. So let's talk that up. If you have a teen and you're in the CES waiver and you've never heard of this, add it to your service plan. If you want to learn more about how to maximize your service plan, that's another thing I do in my private consult is I can take your service plan, we can talk about your situation and look at those services that maybe you are not having in your plan that you could. Yes, we have a lot of caps on the 56 hours in long-term home health and in CFC, but there's not a cap if you can figure out a way to earn income off of the HCBS services. Right? Because that's not under the cap. The Youth Day services is for 12 to 17-year-olds. And the reason they do that is starting at age 12, like most after-school programs or rec center or before and after care, they stop at age 12 because that's the age that most children are left alone for a few hours. But of course, a lot of our kids can't be left alone. So that's why they create this, that is sort of a daycare type benefit. And it's for 12 to 17-year-olds. And it does not have to be out of the home. It can be someone that you find. For example, if you found a student who could pick up your kid at school and bring them home and stay there till you're back from work, that could be billed as youth day services because you're working. If you're volunteering at another school or another organization, they can come and cover while you're volunteering. If you're out seeking work, they can come and relieve you so that you can do that. All of those are allowable under youth day services. Yes, 12 to 17, in or out of the home, yes. I'm not clear. I think Megan's Place was the only person that may have onboarded, but I think she actually didn't do it because there's not a group code. So if you have a group, you can't bill that service. It has to be one-on-one. And I was trying to work with HICPUF to create a group code, but now that we're in not funding new things mode, can't bring up too many new ideas with them. The one thing another cost savings idea that I had was, and I've talked to a couple people in the case management agencies about, is maybe seeing if the state would CDAS. I'm going to do a quick overview. If you don't know what CDAS is, Consumer Directed Attendance Support Services. CDAS is available for a delivery of your community first choice services. That's homemaker, personal care, and health maintenance. And what it does is it gives you the allocation of, say, 10 hours times $20 a week. Then you get that $200. And then you run your own payroll. You can decide to pay people 10 hours at $20, or you can pay them 5 hours at $40. As long as you total that amount, of course, making it simple, right? You have to pay for payroll tax, which is 7.5%, and then you have to pay $103 a month to your FMS, like your fiscal management service, who does your payroll, but it's way, way less than paying through a PASA, right? So one of the ideas that has been floated around is, hey, why don't we go to the state and say, could we make some of the HCBS services available to bill through CDOTs? So that way I can stretch my money more. I can pay a little bit more to those providers. I think that would be a reasonable thing for us to float with the Medicaid Commission. I'm planning on doing it because then we wouldn't have to increase the budget, right? We're not asking for more money in the pot. What we're asking is for us to have different ways to spend the money that we're allocated instead of having to use an agency, that we might also want to do consumer direction for things maybe like youth day services, maybe for respite, maybe for a slew of different opportunities to support a community connector for adult waivers, because not all of the services require oversight from an agency. I think that we need to get a little bit more fiscally oriented, and instead of asking for more, asking for tweaks and on using the stuff that exists more effectively. Turn off my slide deck and then see if we have any other questions. Now I get to see all of your faces. Yay! All right, any other questions, thoughts, reactions? Are you overwhelmed? If you're a little less, if you haven't been in this space as much, it's really overwhelming. But I think the takeaway is now's a good time to tool up on your knowledge, right? So if these are sounding like Greek to you, start following my page on Facebook, sign up for my newsletter so that you can get your information and start going to some of these meetings. You don't have to go in person. All of them are recorded. They also have agendas and reports, so you can just skim through them. And if there's something interests you, then you can go to the audio. Can you do a meeting with those of us who are interested in the case management? Oh, I love that idea, Michelle. That's awesome. I'm going to write your name down and then make sure that I follow up with you on that. Yeah, I floated it by the case management agency, and a couple of them were interested. And we know, what do I want to say? I've had some really good case managers. I don't want to throw them all under the bus, okay? One of them's actually now the soft taps reviewer at the state. That's good to have that contact. She was my best case manager ever. So we just need more stability, right? We don't want this turnover. We're having so much turnover with these case managers. So I'm going to put Michelle down as interested in the case manager idea. If anyone else is, you can either put your name in the chat or you can reply to any of my emails if you don't want to put your name out there publicly. I understand. So this will be recorded and sent out to people. And if you came late, you can watch it. If you just want to rewatch it. 3 case managers in 7 months. That is a pretty amazing fact. I think I had 3 in 9 months, and I didn't meet 2 of them because I didn't need to talk to them. I try to be a low maintenance client. If you get your service plan, this is another thing so I have this program in Navigating Disability Colorado where you join, and then we have content. I have like a bunch of info online about all 9 waivers. And then we have regular Zoom, I call it group coaching, where we just get together and ask questions. And, we like to share ideas there and give support and come up with creative things. So if that's of interest to you to get that community support and also get access to content, I'm now literally re-reporting all 84 of my modules. I've been doing it slowly over the last 3 months, and now I'm going back and recording a couple more that changed. Courtney's interested. Great. Yeah, I just think lived experience. We all know the stuff. And we may not know all the waivers, and that's okay. But like if you understand, okay, you go through disability determination, then you get your waiver, and then you get a service plan. The flow is the key. And then once you get into different waivers, usually the case management agencies divide the team up into IDD waivers and non-IDD waivers. And then they also divide the IDD into children's and adults. And they do the same thing for the non-IDD. And then that way you kind of have specialty case managers. But most of them churned. A lot of them get it out of college. And it's actually, in case you're curious, it's not that the benefits outweigh the income. I think that a starting case manager is around $55,000, which in my opinion is egregious. No one should be getting paid less than $75,000 to live in Colorado now, regardless of where you live in Colorado. But it's $55,000, and then you get benefits. So the benefits, I think, are probably worth 20% of that salary, right? When you think about health insurance, PTO, all of those things. So I encourage people to look at a job differently, not just by the amount. But yeah, I think it'd be really fun. I think it's a brilliant idea that the case management agencies should pay us to implement. How about that? We could start a group. Say, hey, case management agencies, if you want our institutional knowledge, you need to pay us, and we'll bill you for coming up with this idea. Because you got to think. My last case manager, I ended up firing her and getting someone else. She went through 3 months of computer training. 3 months, people. 12 weeks on computers and in phone calls and shadowing different people. That's a lot of money for a case management agency. If we can cut down on that churn, they should raise the rate that they pay people. Okay, we don't have the churn now. Now you can increase it to $75,000 a year. See, I have big ideas. I'm crazy. All right, let me read the chat. I've been doing case management for a nonprofit for 13 years. I got laid off due to Medicaid cuts. Well, you need to look at the case management agencies. They're all hiring, every single one of them. Michelle is interested. Thank you for the compliment, Michelle. I do love what I do. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the community and the connection and the karma, right? We all need karma for when we face our maker. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Becky. It was a lot of content, you guys. And I kept saying, should I include that? Should I include that? And I said, no, I want to put everything in there. And then you can go back and you can rewatch the sections that apply to you. If you have a kid, maybe you want to go back and review the children's areas. If you have someone on DD, go back and review the DD areas. And then join my newsletter. Get info, join my roadmap program to get ongoing support, and follow me on Facebook, because I do think information is going to be the currency for us in this change. Creativity is going to get us through this and trying to find financial ways to survive when our income is cut in half, right? And supporting each other. I'm going to be tweaking my program. And I see Brianna in here. I'm glad she's here. And focusing more on community, focusing more on creating groups where parents can connect with each other in small groups based on area or waiver or maybe disability category. I want people to realize that the power is us sharing information with each other, not me just creating a PowerPoint, but you saying, hey, I had this idea up in Erie. Hey, we're doing this down with parents in Pueblo, and we're creating a network so that we can relieve each other with respite or youth day services so that we can go and work. And a lot of people find working the best respite of all. I know this sounds crazy, people, but we work hard supporting our loved ones at home. And sometimes going and turning off that brain. And even if I have a friend that works at Nordstrom Rack, she's like, the highlight of my week, I forget about everything. I just go there and I look at clothes and I check them out, and it's the best thing for my mental health. So I think the fear of working outside the home, maybe we need to think a little bit more realistically and also find things that match you and what you need the best. And if you don't want to work like for a job, maybe work for other families. And let's talk about it. Let's connect. Let's create some, networks. All right. Anyone else want to come off of mic? Brianna, do you want to share anything? Courtney, Henry, I know you have a lot to share. If you're willing to share, please come off of mute. And Vanessa's here too. Vanessa's gotten very creative. I don't know if she wants to share anything. You can also have your, one thing I didn't put there. Okay. So I keep thinking of new things for my slide deck. BFC, Community First Choice. Do you know that you can hire 16 and 17-year-olds? I read the rules and I was like, holy moly, I didn't know this. Why? Because the IHSS community years ago told the state we need to expand our workforce. And a lot of vocational schools are now getting CNAs to 16 and 17-year-olds. And we want to hire some of them to come to our house and give us our 2-hour evening get ready for bed shift. And so the state did it as a pilot and it was successful. And now it's in all of CFC. So you can actually hire high school students to do personal care, homemaker, or health maintenance activities, as long as they pass your agency stuff, of course. And then you can hire a family member who is 18 to provide care in the home. So my son, when he turned 18, was able to start doing respite for me and his dad. And that's a huge benefit. So, and if they're living in the home, it's tax-free for them. So that makes that money even more valuable. So let's start thinking creatively. Maybe you know another family and they have a child that's 16, 17, or 18, and they're experienced in working with individuals with disabilities. Maybe you want to start recruiting from them. Let's start thinking hyper-local. Let's open our eyes and opportunity to creativity and not expect the system. The system's not going to do it for us. We all know that. Nicole, Chelsea, anybody?
Hey, yeah, I just actually had a quick question about employment because you had mentioned about, working outside the home can be respite. Are there certain, I guess, requirements or criteria for being employed? Because, like, for example, I've been just trying to be self-employed, it's just like being a visual artist, creating my own stuff, selling it. So not like going somewhere, like I'd be working just on my home. So, if they accept, I don't know what kind of documentation or stuff that
are you talking about staying on Medicaid or?
I was just looking at, because my son falls into that category of the day. He's 13. And if they require, or, the idea is that it's for you to be working or seeking work, if there's like certain things where like they need to see certain documentation or proof that you're doing that to accept.
That's a good question. I haven't had that many people use the benefit, but basically the compliance piece falls on your PASA. So that'd be a question for the PASA that would bill that youth day services. You say, okay, what do you require for documentation? And like volunteering. I'm going to volunteer at my other kid's school, right? This is the name of the school. This is what a lot, you just chart it into your chart. And then if they get audited, which is happening a lot, or surveyed, they call it survey. If you have a PASA, like if I owned a PASA, they'd come and survey me and say, well, Nicole said she was volunteering, but it doesn't say where. So then I might get dinged. And then in my corrective action plans, it's going to say, make sure you always say where you're working. So I think it's more in your documentation in your shift. Mm-hmm. And then if they dug deeper, they might ask for proof of income or something. But self-employment's fine. Mm-hmm. I also have another mom, and I'm trying to get her to use this benefit. I said to her, in my opinion, I think when you are charting and doing all of the work related to being a family caregiver, to me, that's working. That's part of your work. So if you need 2 hours a week to chart, to write emails, to follow up on your service plan, in my opinion, that's valid. And we all need admin time. I call it admin time, right? Yeah. So I haven't heard back if she asked her agency that, but I might just go ahead and ask Colorado Family Caregivers. I'm going to write that down. So I believe that they offer that service, Colorado Family Caregivers, about documentation for the youth day services. And then if anyone's on CHIRP, they have another benefit. And I'm just going to get this on the recording too, because some people may be listening. That's not CHIRP is a great waiver, goes up through the age of 20. Most people don't know that. And you actually can get in a host home between 18 and 20 on the CHIRP. Did you know that? People don't know that, and it's paid by the state. So the youth days, they have a benefit in CHIRP called Child Youth Mentor, CYM, Child Youth Mentor. And child youth mentor is someone that it's a little bit like a community connector, child youth mentor, and it has no cap. No cap. So I have a mom whose son was just recently put in a foster care home. He's not 18 yet. He's in a foster care home on the chirp. And the foster parents, amazing people, but they have 3 clients. And I said, how do you get a break? And they're like, it's really hard. We can't bill respite because we have a daily rate. Just like me as a caregiver on the DD, I don't get respite. They just expect me to work 24/7. So I said, what about child youth day services? Or child youth mentor, sorry, CYM. And they're like, we don't know about this. And so I told the family, I told the care person, and they got it in their plan. And so now they have an amazing young man. He just graduated college. He's going to come and take the youth 3 days a week for 4 hours a time to the swimming pool, to the gym. He's a very physical kid, and get him in the community doing physical activities. That is really hard for the foster care home to do around his needs because they have 2 other clients. So let's get creative. Let's learn about these services in the waivers that maybe we didn't know about before. And by getting that break and having that youth go out and get physical activity with a one-on-one, he's going to come back and better participate and learn and grow in that foster care home. So it's a win-win.
Thank you so much for typing.
Yeah. Vanessa, did you want to share something? I think I see Vanessa's off mute. Mute her up. Sometimes she's, you know how we get busy with all our kids. Any other questions?
Okay, now I'm here.
Good. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Yeah, no, I think I'm just lucky that I have my 2 daughters that are over 18 that they help me with respite, and so I'm able to use all the hours that they provide for my kids. But I'm gonna look into that, but you just mentioned the child youth mentor.
Yeah, child youth mentor is just for the chirp waiver. Youth day services is on the CES. So youth day services is for 12 to 17-year-olds. So I think you have 1 child in that age range.
Yeah.
So child mentorship, and I think Family Caregivers offers that service. So
Okay.
but I can look up more if you're interested. Just email me and I can get a few more options there. But the nice thing about that is there's no cap. So you start running into that cap on respite, right? And this is a way to sort of, if you do need more help, to use that benefit instead of respite. You can also use respite too.
Okay.
Additional support. And if you're working, think about it, Vanessa, if you're working taking care of another child, giving them direct support on Medicaid, and you need someone to supervise another child while you're working on the other child, that is considered youth day services because you're working.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you're not double billing because one person's billing for one kid and another person's billing for another.
Yeah. Okay.
So not at the same time on the clock, the billable is going to 2 different people.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, so I had a question in the chat about CES converting to chirp. So as we know, and I cover in my program in depth, there's criteria for every waiver. For example, we have the brain injury waiver, we have the health waiver, right? There's different criteria. And for the CES, the criteria is having an IDD. The criteria is having sleep disruption and also high behavioral needs, okay? So those are 3 criteria for the CES. There's different criteria for the chirp. The chirp, you can have an IDD or you don't have to have an IDD. If you have an IDD, you have to have very significant behavioral support needs that you can document. If you don't have an IDD, you can document something called a serious emotional disturbance. In SED, serious emotional disturbance is pretty much mental health conditions. So if you're an individual, for example, has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, anxiety, bipolar, things like that, you can document that. And then you connect it with behaviors like he's destroyed his room, he's cleared classrooms at school, things like that. Those documented incidences together could get you on a chirp waiver. And the chirp waiver goes through the age of 20. You can go in a foster care home if you're under 18. And once you hit 18, you transition to a host home. And the host home is, just like the adult model. And in my opinion, that's one way to get on the DD waiver because, if you're in a host home and you're settled and you appeal to the state for an emergency enrollment, he's already out of the home. I think that there might be a better pathway if you truly have an emergency enrollment issue for a youth that's coming off of CHIRP or is in CHIRP over 18. That's a direction that people could go. Chelsea, do you have a question? I know some of you are probably busy and can't come off of mute, but I will record this and send it out to you today. I'm so glad you came. I hope that you will consider following through the newsletter, social media, looking into joining our program so that you can get this kind of ongoing support. And I hope that I didn't overwhelm you with changes, but I hope I also maybe planted some seeds of creativity. Yeah, Chelsea, no worries. You'll get the recording. And don't worry, if you want to watch John 2.0, I'm okay with that. If you want to fast forward through things, I'm okay. I won't know. Michelle asked, can you have CHIRP and DD? No, you cannot be enrolled in 2 waivers. But my point was, if you have a youth who has super high behavioral needs and mental health needs, that's kind of the profile for CHIRP. And they can no longer be successful in your family home. They can either go to a foster care home under 18 or a host home once they're 18 to 21. And once you're in those out-of-home placements, as you get closer to 18 or 21, you can use the emergency enrollment process. This is something that I help a lot of parents do, because sometimes parents are 80. I have parents that are 85 taking care of their adult children, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. I help them do the emergency enrollment process, which is at the state, where you can jump to the head of the line because you don't have a caregiver, a family caregiver anymore. So if, for example, your loved one is in a host home and you're like, oh my gosh, they're headed toward 21. I cannot take them back in the home. Their needs are too high. My health isn't good, whatever it is. Then you could do the emergency enrollment process, and they're already stable in a host home. In my opinion, I think it would be harder for the state to argue that the emergency enrollment is inappropriate, because clearly that person was already in a host home because of their support needs. So I think it would be an easier appeal, even if you had to appeal it to the state for that enrollment. It'd be like, hey, clearly this person cannot be in our family home because they haven't been in our family home. So I need the DD waiver. So just a thought. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. You guys stayed 15 minutes past our end time. Congratulations. And feel free to, if you want to hit return, any email you get from me, if you hit return, it comes back to my inbox. I'm a small company, me and a couple contractors, so I'll try to answer your questions too. I realize some things are private and you don't really want to put it on a recorded Facebook page or recorded a link. So have a wonderful day. I hope you have a good 4th. Find some joy in the little things. Take care of yourself, and we can get through this. We're still in one of the best states, believe it or not, even with these cuts. So we got to, work together. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Have a great 4th of July, everybody. Thank you, and thanks, Michelle. Bye, Chelsea.